hey, we're in the sales process and they really need to learn about what this can do, but also what their own problems are. Many of them didn't truly understand their own problem, it was kind of a shock to me because I would have figured, hey, you should know your business. You should know what's happening. But because they're so focused on their business, they almost can't see the forest for the trees, right? They can't see that this is the way the industry is changing and shaping. And me having these conversations with all these different people across many different companies, I could see that. And so it became more of, I need to kind of educate them on what's happening in the industry and what they need to do in their business. And what I realized was, and this is what everybody does, and I kind of tell my clients this right away, demos are not training. Don't go through and show them how to use the product, right?
I hate that.
Yep. If you drop it down, you do this.
There's
you fill
this
out
report.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
security thing. I don't give a shit. How is it going to help my business?
Yes, exactly. Demos aren't training. Training is for training. Let that happen after they sign up. Demos are for showing them what they could accomplish, right? What could they do? What are their results? And that's a lot of what I say is, hey, don't sell the product, sell the results. Sell what's going to happen after.
And we're back for another episode of the Startup Hustle. Very excited today for it to be another Matt and Matt show. I always have a lot of guests named Matt. I don't know why, but today we have Matt Wolach, and he is the founder and CEO of Excellis. We are going to talk about the holy grail of SaaS companies today, figuring out how to sell something. It's like the number one problem from every company. And I had that problem. Matt, my guest today, also had that problem, which is what led him to start his consulting company. There'll be a link in the show notes to his company. You can check him out. Before we get started, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by Fullscale, which is my company. If you're looking to hire software developers and grow your team, you can check us out and hire amazing talent from the Philippines for less than half the price that you can in the United States. Matt, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Matt. Super excited to be here. I enjoyed our conversation last time we chatted, and I'm super excited for what we're going to talk about today.
Well, I was on your podcast. I guess before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Scale Your SaaS, and it's really geared towards how can you grow with marketing and sales. And so I bring on some experts in the industry like yourself who come in and share their experience within the software world on what you need to do to implement so that you can really grow your company and start taking some leaps and bounds. So Scale Your SaaS is the show.
So one of the hardest problems for every SaaS founder, I think this is what makes a founder usually a founder, is they identify a problem and like, hey, nobody else has solved this, or they haven't solved it in the way that I want to solve it. Maybe I should invent whatever the thing is, and I'm going to go solve this thing, and maybe I should sell it to somebody else. Doesn't mean I have any idea how to do that. Right. And I think that's where, most people struggle. And there's a lot of SaaS founders that are also engineering types, or more like myself. They're software developers. They can build the thing, whatever the thing is, but they struggle with like who the target audience is and how to sell it and all these things. And I've definitely been there. My career has changed, over the last 25 years of my career, I have definitely went through this. And you went through this, which is part of what led you to where you are today, and how you coach and help other people that have these problems. So very excited for you to be here today and share your experience. But give us a little bit of your backstory and how you ended up with these same struggles.
Yeah, for sure. And before that, what you kind of triggered something with me when you talked about how, hey, a lot of people are technical founders. They created some awesome product and they launch it and nothing. And that happens a lot. And in fact, it's kind of crazy because 20, 30 years ago when SaaS was kind of starting getting going and starting to have that software as a service, it was so lightly filled, the industry was, that there might be one or two products in each different niche. And so it was super easy to be able to sell, but it was really hard to build that. There weren't a lot of experts at building SaaS software and creating all of that. And nobody had done it before. So all of the technical people didn't know how to learn from other technical people how to do that. So it was really hard to build a product. But then once it was there, people would come to you. It's kind of an if you build it, they will come. But now it's completely flipped, right? It's much easier to build things. You can hire awesome developers from Matt and Fullscale and put them in place, and bingo, you've got some amazing product. But now there's so much competition. Because it's so easy to come to market, there is so much out there. And so we've actually seen many industries have quadruple the competition that they had even 5 to 10 years ago. And so now the selling of that and the actual getting in front of people and getting people to buy your product is much, much harder. And in fact, a lot of people who come to me, they've done this same thing. Just like you said, they found an opportunity of maybe there was something going wrong in their own business or something that they identified, and they created a solution to that and said, hey, everybody, here it is. And nobody listened. And even
Nobody
the people
cares.
who came to them, they can't convince them to buy their thing versus the 10 other things that are similar. So you're right, it's really hard. And that's kind of where I was. Now, it's been a bit longer since I launched mine. It was mid-2000s. And we, I did, just like you said, identified a niche. I had never been in software before, but found that there was a need. And so we launched, and it was tough. Early going was really, really rough. I didn't have any money for 9 months. And by the way, my wife was newly pregnant. So it was tough. And I had to kind of scrape and claw and figure things out and learn this and learn that. And selling is tough. Selling in software is even more difficult. And fortunately, I was able to overcome some of these challenges, and after a few years, start to see some decent scale. But it took a lot of time, and I don't know what I would have done if I didn't find the process that I came up with, because that really scaled us. And we eventually took off, hit Inc. 500 several years in a row. That's the fastest growing companies in America. I think you're part of that as well, Matt.
Yeah.
And we eventually had a very nice exit. So that's kind of a success story that was lucky.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, we're on YouTube, you can see my Inc. 500 plaque behind me. I have one of them.
I love it.
So tell us just real quick about your company. This was quite a long time ago now. Was in the medical record space. So you built this software and you tried to sell it. Like, how did you try to sell it originally? That didn't work so well.
Yeah. So, obviously in software, you have a software and people come to you saying, hey, I want to see what you've got. So the natural inclination is, sure, let me just show it to you. And you kind of walk them through it and you show, oh, look at how this drop down does this thing, and look at this button here and look at that. And it sounds so normal and natural, like that's how you would do it. And guess what? It doesn't work. And it was a shock to me that why weren't people buying this? It looks amazing. You see how it'll change your life and make you better, and nothing. And they just wouldn't get it and they wouldn't understand it. And it was so
you were getting lots of
frustrating.
appointments? It's like you didn't have problems connecting to the target audience. You didn't have problems getting appointments and doing demos. Like that part of it you had figured out how to do, but you just struggled to close the sales.
Yes. Initially, we had to try and figure that out, but we did start to get in and start to get people coming to us and start to get people to talk to us. But we didn't realize exactly what we needed to do to convert them. So they realized they need something. They wanted something. They wanted the solution. They were talking to us. We just didn't know what to do, and it was all on my shoulders, so it was quite a lot of stress, and we just couldn't get enough people signed up. So that's exactly the case.
So I had similar problems with Stackify, my previous company. I was kind of building something that was sort of for myself, which is a terrible idea because you think you know too much about all of it, and you don't spend enough time talking to the target audience. And even once we had built a product that was a good product, it was how do we reach them? So we really struggled with how do we reach the audience, and tried a bunch of different things, tried advertising on Google, tried all this stuff, and none of it worked very good. But eventually we did figure out that search engine optimization, like writing blogs and all that kind of stuff worked really well for us. We eventually grew that business to getting like up to 10 million website visitors a year. So we had a lot of people coming to our website, and we, if you only convert like 0.1% of those people, like 1 in 1,000 convert for a trial, you were getting some trials. Then you have the same problem in SaaS, and that kind of SaaS company where it was kind of product-led growth, right? It's like they have to sign up for the product, they have to download it, they have to see value in it, and then decide if they want to buy it or not, right? Which is a little different than if you're doing a demo and on that side of it. So eventually we figured out, that company had also ended up in the Inc. 500 and all that stuff, which was really cool. Sold that company. But my question for you is, you work with companies that are on both sides of that, right? You have companies that are probably more like sign up for it, you try it and use it, and then more of an enterprise sale where you're more demo and a bigger ticket.
Actually, mine is more medium to enterprise. Those that want the self-serve, product-led growth path, I probably wouldn't be as big of a help. I have other people who I can refer you to, but it's tougher. Now, one of the things
really
we look
tough.
at, because That's the dream for everybody, right? Like, oh, I built this awesome thing. I'm just going to put it out there, and then they're going to tell other people, and they're going to tell her, and everybody's just going to flock and sign up, right? And that doesn't
No.
really happen. It's really, really, really hard to do a product-led growth strategy. In fact, a lot of product-led growth companies started having conversations with people so they could learn what that market needed and what the buyer really wanted before they could get the product-led growth engine working. So even those, actually, you do need to talk to somebody. What I actually look at, Matt, is determining, can you do product-led growth? You really need to be about under $100 a month. And you might be able to do it above that, but really under $100 a month is kind of that line that we've seen. If you think about it, let's just go a little more extreme. If you're at $1,000 a month, it's really hard to find people clicking around the internet to just buy your thing for $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't really happen. Whereas $19
They want to talk
month,
to somebody.
yeah, they're going to want to hear somebody. They're going to want to understand exactly, is it going to work for me, and what are the parameters of the deal and all that stuff. Something like $19 a month, that's great. Like, that's something that people can click around and they realize, okay, I'll just get out if I don't need it. That's easy.
So tell me, with your previous company we were just talking about, let's go back to that for a minute. What did you figure out eventually that made the difference in your process? Like, I'm getting demos, I'm doing demos with people, but I'm just not converting very many of them. What was it about that you figured out you had to change?
So I started to realize that, hey, we're in the sales process, and they really need to learn about what this can do, but also what their own problems are. Many of them didn't truly understand their own problem, it was kind of a shock to me, because I would have figured, hey, you should know your business, you should know what's happening. But because they're so focused on their business, they almost can't see the forest for the trees, right? They can't see that this is the way the industry is changing and shaping. And me having these conversations with all these different people across many different companies, I could see that. And so it became more of, I need to kind of educate them on what's happening in the industry and what they need to do in their business. And what I realized was, and this is what everybody does, and I kind of tell my clients this right away, demos are not training. Don't go through and show them how to use the product, right?
I hate that.
Yep. If you drop it down, you do this.
There's
you fill
this
out
report,
yeah,
this
exactly.
security thing. I don't give a shit. How is it going to help my business?
Yes, exactly. Demos aren't training. Training is for training. Let that happen after they sign up. Demos are for showing them what they could accomplish, right? What could they do? What are their results? And that's a lot of what I say is, hey, don't sell the product, sell the results. Sell what's going to happen after. And that was a big learning for me. And once we implemented that started to work. But really the big thing for us was implementing a process that I had to create from scratch. Like I said, there were no experts in software, SaaS, and everything like that in the mid 2000s. They were all going through it, learning it on their own, like I was. And so, now, fortunately, I've been through the process and I can help others. But back then, there was nobody to help out. I kind of had to figure it out myself. Fortunately, I did, and we started to see that scale.
So tell us more about the journey. So you figured that out, and how many more years? You were in Inc. 500, you said, a few years, sold the company a few years later. How does that story end?
Yeah, I think we were in Inc. 5000 like 5 years in a row, I want to say.
That's awesome.
So it was pretty cool. We were scaling like mad, like crazy. It was one of those things where there were 3 of us who started it, and all of a sudden, I remember we hit 100 employees, and then we hit 200 and 300. The numbers just kept going so much faster. I prided myself that I knew everybody up to 100 people. And then after that, it just started to get nuts. And but that's beside the point. The process is really what helped us do it, because if you think about it, the founder has the best chance to sell. They've seen the whole company's history. They've met the most people in the industry. Maybe they know the industry inside and out, and people know them. And they kind of also have the most desire to force things through and make deals happen. But getting to that next person is really difficult. A lot of people hit what I call a brick wall. A lot of founders struggle transitioning everything that they've done to now they hire a sales expert to come in and take over. And everybody thinks, hey, I don't really know sales. I'm a tech founder, just like we talked about. I'm just going to bring somebody in. They'll be fine. They'll take over. They're an expert. They should know what to do. And it fails all the time. And I fail with that as well. Brought in an expert. I'm like, well, yeah, just do your thing. You've got a great background, great experience. He came in and he failed. He never closed one deal for months. And it was really frustrating because I wanted him to close. He was frustrated because he felt like he didn't know how to do it within this industry. And eventually we had to let him go. And it was one of those things that it took a few weeks to realize it wasn't his fault. It was mine. I never had set him up for success. I never had given him the formula for how to close deals. And that's when it really hit home was, hey, I have found something here. I just need to make sure that I can make it scalable and repeatable so somebody else can take over and run it just as well. And once I did that, once I created that process based on what I was doing successfully, and then hired two other people who didn't have nearly the same background as the first guy, well, I showed them the process, walked them through the formulas, and they closed just as well as me. And I knew if I could do it with two, we could do it with a lot. And we eventually grew the sales team to over 30 people and the company over 400 some people, and ended up exiting for quite a lot of money.
So it depends on your model too, right? If you're more inbound or if it's outbound, if you're doing like cold, more cold outbound kind of stuff. So in your case, were you doing, was it inbound or outbound in your case?
We had both. It was mostly inbound, but we also had other things that are kind of a combination. We had things like trade shows we would go to quite often, and events where we would meet people within the industry, that sort of thing.
So for an early stage company that is kind of struggling with this problem right now, do you recommend that they focus on outbound or focus on efforts that drive inbound? What do you recommend they focus on first?
Yeah, good question. So when people come to me and they're struggling with lead generation and going to market, one of the things we look at, first of all, there's 18 different ways to generate leads in the software world, 18 completely different methods. And some people are like, okay, yeah, those 18, you've got email and calls and Twitter. Actually, outbound is just one of those 18.
Yeah.
So cold emails, cold calls, Twitter DMs, LinkedIn messages, all of that is just one of the 18. There's 17 other ways we can drive leads. What we want to look at is, well, first of all, we're not going to do all 18 ways. That would be a crazy lack of focus, especially for a startup if you're a 1 or 2 person operation. What we want to do is figure out what are the 3 to 5 that fit for your budget, that fit for your market and where they live, that fit for your time allotment, and put those in place, optimize those, and start really making them happen. Once that happens, you can start to see great things working. Why 3 to 5? Well, you might find one channel that works great. What happens is a lot of companies say, okay, this channel's awesome. We're going to hit it hard with this channel. Maybe it's, I don't know, Facebook ads. Well, things change so much. And just a few years ago, Facebook changed their rules and Apple changed their rules. And in a few months, all of a sudden ads that were working great didn't work at all. And so you might have this marketing channel that's fantastic, and then all of a sudden it dies and you've got nothing. And so what we do is yeah, exactly. Let's implement 3 to 5 channels. That way, if one of them dies off, you still have other things filling your pipeline, and it works great. So that's something that we absolutely are proponents of.
So when you refer to those 18 traction channels, are you referring to like the book Traction from Gino Wickman?
No, although I love that. And that's the second time today I've been talking about that book with somebody.
Okay.
One of my clients asked about it, but no, totally different. These are more ways of lead generating.
Okay, so similar concepts, right? And if you haven't read the book, it's a cool book. You can also just Google like traction channels, and there's like great blog posts from HubSpot and all these different people about these kinds of traction channels. And I would say kind of saved my business that I was mentioned for at Stackify. I looked at that list, like there's 18 of them or whatever it was, and went through the list and said, okay, what's going to work for our audience? And that's where we figured out, content marketing for us was big. And there was another one on there that was engineering as marketing, which is like, how do we build something for free that we can give away that will attract, users and an audience? And that one also worked really well for us. You talk about having 3 to 5 of them. We found a couple of them that worked well for us. And every single business is totally different. And I really recommend for those that are struggling with how to do lead gen to look at this list like we're talking about, all these different channels. I had Charity Majors on the podcast today, who is the founder of Honeycomb. It's like an enterprise observability application monitoring tool for software. Like the vast majority of their sales comes from her Twitter account.
Amazing.
And I don't know how much revenue they have. I'm sure it's like tens of millions of dollars or something a year. But yeah, there are people that follow her on Twitter and, that engage with her content, like her point of view, the problems they solve, all this kind of stuff. There are so many traction channels that can work. That's the point. And every business is totally different. At Full Scale, we do software development for other people. Check us out at fullscale.io. A lot of our business comes from LinkedIn or this podcast or my newsletter. I guess those are 3 traction channels, right? So, every business is totally different. You just have to figure out what works for you. So at your software company we were talking about before, which traction channels work the best for you?
SEO is great for us. Inbound was awesome, as well as trade shows were fantastic. And then also partners. Those were the 3 main ones for us. Some of my clients right now, that would not be the right fit. And so I would advise them differently. But those were the ones that really worked well. And And one of the things I didn't do while I was building my software companies was exactly what you said. I'm glad Charity's doing is your own brand. And I've had some people say, hey, I want all of my people posting on social because that kind of increases our impact. But a personal brand is something that somebody can connect to. A company brand, it's nice to grow, but humans don't connect with a company brand. They connect with the people behind it. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, for example, Tesla has like 10 or 15 million followers on Twitter. Elon Musk has like 170 million followers on Twitter. Like they connect with the person. And so everybody's always heard people buy from people. And that's why she's getting all of that experience from there.
Yeah.
You, Matt, people love you. They follow you for your insights. And of course, the company benefits from that. Same thing with my company. And it's just kind of the way it goes. But I don't think enough people understand that. I certainly didn't understand that when I was scaling my software companies. That's something I would go back and change is more personal branding, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff.
So when you're working with a lot of your clients, are you helping them build additional traction channels? Or are you coaching them on like how to do cold email, how to do cold outreach? How does that look like? What are some of the things you help them with?
Yeah, all the above. So a lot of them are struggling with lead gen. So we help them identify, and I'll go in and actually look at, hey, based on your marketing or based on your market, these are the different things within your within the 18 channels that fit for your business at this point. And we'll work on exactly what types of cold emails work, how to structure the email, why your current emails don't work, what the success rate should be, all that sort of stuff, even down to the tech that you need to make that happen. A lot of people just start emailing. There's a lot of things you need to do before you start emailing, and we kind of go into exactly that. But then also once you start generating leads and you start getting these people that want to talk to you, how do you close them? How do you make sure that they actually want to buy? Because so many times people come to you and they say, hey, I just want to check out your thing, and you show it and they leave saying, hey, this is nice, I'll think about it. We don't want, this is nice, I'll think about it. We want, holy cow, where have you been? I've needed this for so long. I didn't even know it. Let's go. That's what we want at the end of a call. And most people don't know how to make that happen.
I just posted on LinkedIn a few minutes ago before we started about if you're talking to somebody and they say, that would be awesome, that's not the reason to build a feature in your product. What you want them to hear them say is, I couldn't live without this. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that is the problem you want to solve, because wouldn't this be awesome is more like, the cool. Like people don't buy things that are cool. They buy things because they need them to run their business. But as founders, and I think especially as tech people, we chase the cool things. Like we this would be cool. We could build this. We could be this. But from a sales perspective, right? When you're trying to understand their problems, they're trying to find solutions to their problems. And I know that's something that you mentioned before we started recording too, is one of the big things that helped you was really honing in on problem solving in your discovery calls as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our process, discovery is a big thing. Discovery, some people call it needs analysis or qualification, but that's the point at the beginning where you need to ask your prospects a series of questions. And a lot of people, even experienced sellers in software, think that discovery process is just to find fit. We want to make sure we don't sell to the wrong prospect. Everybody talks about ICP and your ideal customer. Great, that's awesome. Fit is a good thing. We need to make sure we're selling to the right people. However, discovery is for much more than just finding fit. In fact, 3 other things we can get out of discovery that are not fit related. Number 1 is we can connect with our buyer on a personal level. In fact, studies have shown that buyers are 5 times more likely to buy if there is some sort of connection. That can happen in the discovery process. Number 2 is we want to make sure they understand we know what we're talking about, right? They want to trust you and believe that you're an expert who can help them. And so many times people learn that and realize, oh, I need to tell them about how great I am and everything I know or all the companies we've sold. And actually, they don't care about that. And that'll actually probably be anti-beneficial for you because it's going to make them think that you're a little full of yourself. The way you can get them to realize you know what you're talking about, just speak the lingo, know the industry. And if you can do that, the questions you ask and how you ask them and the phrases you use and the words you use within that, as well as when they answer and you follow up to that answer, they will know you know. They will know that you understand the industry and they'll get you know what you're talking about because you're speaking their language and the lingo. But the last thing that's super, super important in discovery is exactly what you're talking about, Matt, is we need to really hit the problems. And a lot of people say, hey, in discovery, let's make sure we find pain. You can't sell without pain. But it's more than that. It's not just finding the pain. It's making sure that the buyers hate their pain. They
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to feel like this is the worst thing ever. I need to get rid of this right away. If it's just like, yeah, it's kind of annoying. We'll figure it out. I don't know. Maybe I'll buy your thing and maybe not. Because you have a pain of switching to your product, switching to your service. There's a pain
Yep.
involved with that, right?
Yep.
So the pain that they're feeling has to be bigger than that pain of switching and getting started and learning a new thing and trying to figure that out and making the team use it. So we've got to overcome that. Now, we use a tactic that we call twisting the knife. Twisting the knife is how you can get your buyers to hate their pain. Because a buyer might come to you and the buyer will say, hey, I've got a problem. My shoulder hurts. Now, I'm using an analogy. It may not be a real person with a real shoulder, but that's what they're saying. And a good seller will identify that their shoulder looks not great, but they actually have a knife in their gut. And that's the big problem. And that knife in their gut's what's really going to hurt them. The problem is most sellers will say, well, but they just asked me about their shoulder, so I'll just tell them how they can fix the shoulder. The problem is the shoulder was never that big of a deal, and the buyer doesn't care too much about it enough to make a buying decision. So the next level seller, the great sellers, they're going to realize that that needs to be identified. And they'll say, hey, yeah, your shoulder doesn't look great, but you have a knife in your gut. That's a big problem.
Right.
And they'll identify and get the buyer to recognize, yeah, I have a knife in my belly. I probably should fix that. The problem there is that those sellers think they've done enough, and so they pull the knife out. Oh, let me tell you about our product and how great it's going to solve this. But the buyer still hasn't gotten to the final level of really caring about that. They still think the shoulder's not good. And so the best sellers, the experts, they're the ones who don't pull the knife out and save the day right there. They twist the knife and they get the buyer to recognize how bad the problem is. Now, they're not intentionally hurting them. They're getting them to understand their business, asking them questions like, where would you be if you didn't have this? And what does this mean to you personally? Does it mean that you have to stay late and you can't get home to the family for dinner? Does this mean that you're not getting promoted because the company doesn't think that you're good enough now? So understanding what it is that's hurting them and how it's hurting them is how we can twist the knife and get the buyer to recognize that things are much worse than they ever figured. And once they realize that, once they are really in pain, now they're ready to buy something. And close rates can go significantly up. One of my clients, Greg, he was at a 1.9% close rate when he came to me. That's from demo, 1.9%. His discovery was basically non-existent. So what we did was I implemented a stronger discovery process, taught him how to use the knife analogy and twist the knife really well. It worked. His clients felt the pain and started buying really quickly. In fact, he went from a 1.9% close rate to a 30.3% close rate in just a couple of months. And obviously changed his business. But he told me, he said, Matt, my buyers, because I'm doing this discovery so well, they're 90% closed before I ever show them the product. They realize that I know what I'm talking about because I'm asking the right questions and that they hate their pain. And since I already know what I'm talking about and I'm helping them through this process, I must also know how to fix it. Let's do business. You have a product, just show me a couple things. Okay, great, let's do it. And it's amazing when you can get to that level.
So can you give us a real world example of that scenario? Like one example that I have in my head that that you probably help people with is, for example, they're not very good at closing deals, and like they think that is they think that's the pain in their shoulder, right? But the problem in their gut is they got the wrong leads, right? It's like you're attracting the wrong kind of leads. Like you know, like I'm curious if is that a fair analogy? Is that a good one?
Yeah, that's a good one. So people might come to me and say, hey, Matt, I have a pain in my shoulder and I identify it. So one of the things I need to do is I need to go through and look at their process. Well, tell me, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? And I ask all throughout the entire sales spectrum, including how are you generating leads and what do the leads look like?
Yeah.
And we have to identify that, you know, are these good leads? Are they not good leads? How are you handling leads? How do you respond to the leads? And these are all the things that we look at until we can identify this is the main problem. Same thing with you. I bet if people come to you and they say, hey, our developers aren't great, or we need more developers, we need a help, we need to spin up a swim lane. Can you give us a team that's going to be able to do that? You probably can identify, well, let's just make sure that you're approaching this in the right way. And how do you typically spin up teams and what do you do here? And really helping them understand exactly what they're doing will tell you whether they're doing it the right way or not, or thinking about it the right way or not, because you know your industry incredibly well. And you'll be able to uncover with them challenges that they're creating on their own, that they are causing because of their process. And if you help them do that, they're going to say, well, fix it for us. Make it happen, Matt. Get us some awesome developers. Let's get this going. And it becomes super easy to close once you've helped them overcome those challenges.
So is one of the big challenges that you help people with, though, is identifying their ICP, who their ideal customer is? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest problems of every startup is, especially as entrepreneurs, we want to sell to everyone. And it's really hard when you're telling me like, no, you've got to narrow it down, and nobody wants to do that. Right? Well, I want to sell to everybody. And is that like a lesson you have to give everybody from like week one because nobody wants to do it?
It's literally week one. It's absolutely what we focus on right away. Even people who come to me and like, well, our company's already 10 million, Matt. Like, we don't need to go. I'm like, yes, we do. Because even though you, the founder, might understand this, your team probably doesn't. If I went to your team and said, hey, list out what the ICP means to you, it would probably be 10 different answers from the entire sales team. So we want to make sure that we have it documented, we have it in place, that the founder actually thinks about what it means. Sometimes they haven't even gone through that process. It's just in their head. And we get that down on paper so that everybody knows. So knowing your ICP is absolutely week one. And you kind of alluded to it, but it's kind of an old saying. If you try to appeal to everyone, you'll appeal to no one. And you have to make sure you hit that niche that works. And the ICP is just one piece of the process, kind of half the problem, because ICP stands for Ideal Customer Profile. That actually refers to a company, the types of companies you go after. And it could refer to what geography are they in, and what is their revenues, and how many employees do they have, and what systems do they use. Those types of things all might be a factor into the ICP. But there's a second piece to this. And the second piece is the buyer persona or the user persona. Buyer user persona means who are the people at that company? Because you might be selling to some big company, but you really don't care about this manager who does that or that director who does this. You care about this person exactly in that company. And you might have 3 or 4 different personas, user personas or buyer personas within a company that are ideal for you. And so when we actually scope out what the ICP is, we go beyond just what the ICP is, all the way to knowing exactly who the types of people are and what they care about, what they're facing, so we truly understand who our buyer is.
Well, and then the next level of that ends up being timing, right? It's like who's in market. You know, even though you identify the right company, the right persona, do they even care about what you have to sell right now? Because it's not a priority for them. But what you hit on earlier is important too, right? Is it a pain? But the thing is, it could be a pain for them. Like you said, it's like shoulder pain, but they may have 3 other problems. Like they're bleeding out because of these other issues right now. And that's the reality of business, right? It's like it's a bad economy. They got these other really big problems. Yeah, you could help them with this thing, but they got like 3 other giant problems. And your problem just isn't the biggest problem right now, right? Like that's one of the other struggles of a business. Like, you can help somebody, this would be great for them, but they just simply have other problems that are bigger problems.
Yeah, other fish to fry, very common. And so part of discovery is identifying where in the prioritization is this thing for them. Where is it? And I would say in most cases, if they're taking the time to talk to you, they feel it's pretty high enough that they're willing to at least explore should they solve it. And so a lot of our goal is when we're having those discussions is helping them uncover the full scope of the problem. So for example, if we talk about twisting the knife, one issue might be, okay, if I'm selling and somebody's coming to me to say, Matt, I want your coaching because I think you can help our sales team. Well, I'm going to twist the knife on them and I'm going to help uncover, okay, well, how many deals are you closing? We walk through an entire process of how many leads you're getting, how many demos you're doing, how many deals you're closing. And then we uncover, well, actually your close rate is far behind industry average. So if you actually close the right close rate, you'd be getting 20 more deals per month. And if you're getting 20 more deals per month and each deal is $10,000 a year, whatever it is, then you're missing $200,000. And that's every month. You're missing $200,000. And I would actually hammer that home, twisting the knife, saying, so how much longer do you want to lose $200,000 a month? And most people can't do it. They're like, I need to be done with this yesterday. It makes it a lot easier. If you can really get to the crux of what that issue is and what the pain is, it makes it so much simpler for them to realize this is a high priority. I know I have other fish to fry. I know I have other problems, but this is something that I can solve. And if you can show them that it's really easy with your solution to solve it quickly and painlessly, then they're going to want to implement it, even if they have other things they need to take care of. Almost because this checks off that box and they're done with it, and now they can focus on those other things.
So if somebody's listening right now and they're trying to get their first 5 customers, what recommendation would you give them?
Well, so a big thing, and I know you know this, but I just literally talked with one of my clients about this earlier, is have conversations with people who might be perfect fits without them being sales conversations. And I ask a lot of SaaS founders on my podcast, hey, what was it that worked for you? And the ones that are successful have said, I had a lot of conversations to get to know my market before selling to them, because I wanted to learn, how can we develop the product to fit exactly what they care about? How can we align our marketing messaging to be their lingo and what they're thinking? How can we make sure our sales process and our sales verbiage actually fits with them? Everything comes from really truly knowing your market. So definitely have those conversations. And then once you do, by the way, once you have a conversation of, hey, I just want to chat with you because I've been thinking about this problem. A few people have told me about it. And I'm just wanting to see if I can develop a product that's going to solve this problem. I wanted to ask your help since you are an expert in the industry, kind of flatter them a little bit. And I just want to see if you could help me understand how big of a problem this is for anybody in this industry or you. Now, once you have the conversation, they say, so wait, you're developing something? So tell me about this thing because we need this problem solved.
Yeah.
It kind of leads into a sales conversation, but you don't even have to start it like that. You will get clients from these conversations and it starts to lead to something good. Then once you have those first of all, before you actually start having those conversations, make sure you know how to close. So many people, when they start a company, they're like, well, I'm going to go out and get a bunch of leads just to make sure we have enough. So let me start doing this and that. But the problem is if you go out and spend a lot of time and money on lead generation, and then they're like, okay, I'm ready to talk to you. Tell me what you got. And you don't know how to close them, you don't know how to get them signed up, then you just wasted all that time and money. So we need to make sure the closing process is correct first. Let's get good at that. And then you feel good about it generating leads. One of my clients, Paul, he was at a 26% close rate. Some people might love 26%. He was not happy with it because it was definitely below industry average. He and his team were like, oh, we need to get a bunch of leads. And I said, wait, let's fix closing first. Then we can go out and get a bunch of leads. So he actually improved his closing process really well, did a lot of those discovery things we talked about, got his closing to 87%, from 26% to 87%. And then they went out and spent money on marketing, knowing that we're going to close almost 9 out of 10 of everybody who comes talk to us. That's how
you spent a lot of money on advertising then.
Oh, absolutely. It's time to go nuts. They're killing it.
So what are the average closing rates? And I know that's going to vary a lot from a low-priced product to a high-priced product. But if somebody's listening to this, like, what is reasonable? What should they be shooting for?
It does. And there is some variation depending on price. However, it's not as big as most people will think, mostly because the low-priced products have a lot of competition, including doing nothing. Whereas the high-priced products, it's a longer cycle, but it's usually less competition at those levels. So what we look at is there is a minimum. The minimum close rate across most industries and price points is about 20% close rate, meaning if you do 5 demos, you better close at least 1. But that's really just to kind of stay afloat. You're kind of just treading water at that point. Really what you want to do is get to a 30, 33%, even 40, 50%. That's where you start seeing the incredible scale. Those are the companies that are triple, doubling and getting the awesome buyouts and exit opportunities.
So at my company, it was more of a sign up for a trial, download, and you could use it. But most of the people we did talk to, for our numbers, we'd get about a third of the people that signed up for a trial would actually use the product. Only about a third of them would actually even use it. But of that third, we would sell about another third. So like the overall percentage was only like 10 to 12% for our type of business, which seemed okay and worked okay for us. It was about a third, as you mentioned, but a lot of them, they're tire kickers. Like they sign up for a free trial, never did anything with it.
That's actually really good numbers from a trial. The average trial conversion rate is about 2%. So you were doing much better than that. Yeah. So
okay.
At 10%, that's really good. You're 5 times average. That's one of the reasons why you're in 500. Most trial is a 2% conversion. What I say and tell my clients is trials are not converters. Trials are very hard to convert. Even though you have an amazing product, it's like, oh, people, all they got to do is use it and love it. You just told the story that most people who sign up for a trial never actually use it. Or they click 3 buttons and they're gone and they never come back. And you email them, you do this really cool campaign, still doesn't work. And so trials are great lead generators, but the most successful software companies use it as a lead generator, but then they make sure they get them on the phone because you can close in demos. I told you trial average is 2%. Demo minimum is 20%. And the best demoers, in fact, I have guys doing 70, 80%, no problem. The best demoers are much above that, meaning if we can just get them on the phone, our rates of closing go way, way up.
100%. Well, it has been awesome having you on today. I think if anybody's listening right now and they need help with how to do sales for SaaS, you're obviously a great resource. Tell people a little more about your podcast again, which I think most people probably should go subscribe to if they're in a SaaS business. They'll learn a lot from it. Tell people a little more about how you can help them.
Yeah, so Scale Your SaaS is the podcast. You'll be able to find that at scaleyoursaaspodcast.com or any podcast listing anywhere. It's also posted on YouTube. But you can also find me at mattwolach.com, TTWOLACH. And I have lots of giveaways there, including a scorecard. You can actually plug in your numbers and it will tell you if you're ahead or behind in all kinds of different SaaS metrics. So you know what benchmarks you need to hit and you know what to manage to be able to get there. So that's all free. I give it away at mattwolach.com.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I feel like we could have talked for like hours about all sorts of different topics here, but I'm going to guess most of those topics are on your podcast, and I probably should just go listen to a few episodes. So thank you so much for doing this today, and I really think this was really valuable for a lot of people. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. This was a ton of fun, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.